On June 5, 2025, a critical assassination attempt was supposed to unfold in Burkina Faso. The target was President Ibrahim Traoré, a young, determined, and controversial leader who has shaken up Africa's political landscape. According to Traoré, this was not just another attempt. It would have been the 19th organized plot to take his life. And this time, he claims, the plan was orchestrated with the help of several African presidents, allegedly working in concert with the West. In a bold and emotional public address in Ouagadougou, Traoré named names. He directly accused several heads of state across Africa of conspiring against him, citing a meeting in Côte d'Ivoire, what he described as the center of the latest plot. Among those he mentioned were the presidents of Comoros, Djibouti, Eswatini, Mauritius, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Mauritania, Liberia, and the Central African Republic. He claims they either turned a blind eye or actively collaborated with foreign interests to destabilize his leadership. The West, he alleges, cannot stand an Africa that is united and self-reliant. And Traoré has made that his mission, African unity without dependency. While most of the world watched Burkina Faso's political drama from the sidelines, within Africa, reactions were sharply divided. Some leaders voiced their disapproval of Traoré's rule, especially his military-led rise to power. But others, especially younger heads of state, have stepped forward in recent months to express admiration for his boldness, his refusal to bow to Western pressure, and his vision of African self-determination. But Traoré's revelations didn't end with general accusations. He claimed that the 19th assassination attempt, scheduled for June 5th, was uncovered thanks to a close confidant turned whistleblower, Yabre Omar. Traoré stated that his survival was due not only to increased security, but also to growing grassroots support across Africa. He then went on to identify more presidents he claims are involved in undermining him: Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo of Equatorial Guinea, Adama Barrow of Gambia, Mohamed Ould Ghazouani of Mauritania, and Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo. His list extended to Liberia, where Traoré criticized the current president for cracking down on pro-Traoré protesters. He alleged that 2 activists were killed and several others jailed simply for voicing support for Burkina Faso's leader. He also highlighted Congo's ongoing M23 conflict, accusing Tshisekedi of siding with Western powers to suppress legitimate regional movements. According to Traoré, Congo's leader has refused to support him under any circumstances. Another country he pointed to was Côte d'Ivoire. Alassane Ouattara, the Ivorian president, came under particular fire. Traoré claimed Ouattara not only hosted the June 5th planning session, but has repeatedly argued that Africa cannot progress without Western support. Traoré challenged that notion head-on, saying Africa's wealth, its raw materials and youthful population, makes it not dependent but indispensable. But the list of critics didn't stop there. He accused Southern Sudan's President Salva Kiir of playing both sides, supporting the West while expressing sympathy for Traoré. Similar accusations were made against Uganda's President Museveni, Tunisia's president, Burundi's Evariste Ndayishimiye, Zimbabwe's Emerson Mnangagwa. He also singled out Kenya's President William Ruto. While Ruto had been seen publicly with Traoré in recent months, Traoré questioned his loyalties, noting Ruto's past criticisms of other African leaders who defied Western-backed governance. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, Mozambique's Filipe Nyusi, and Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu were also named. Traoré labeled them as pro-Western leaders who, in his words, have done little to serve their own people and everything to please foreign interests. His tone shifted when speaking about those who support him. He praised Botswana's President Dumelo Gideon Boe, who has openly invited Traoré to his country and expressed interest in learning from him. Traoré also received strong public backing from the current president of Senegal, referred to simply as Fee in his speech, alongside the presidents of Mali, Niger, Guinea-Bissau, Chad, and Zambia. According to Traoré, these leaders represent what he calls the Gen Z presidents, younger heads of state who are inspired by bold ideas and not afraid to break from old alliances. He stressed that these allies believe in an Africa where unity, resource control, and economic freedom take precedence over historical ties to colonial powers. He declared, "It doesn't matter if you come into power through a coup or through an election. What matters is what you do for your people." As he spoke to a crowd waving Burkina Faso's flags and chanting his name, Traoré painted a picture of a continent at a crossroads. One path is familiar, filled with foreign influence, puppet regimes, and divided leadership. The other is untested, but full of potential. a united Africa that finally controls its own destiny. He closed part 1 of his address with a message of warning and hope, that despite 18 failed plots and one final attempt on June 5th, unity has kept him alive, and it may be that same unity that transforms Africa. President Ibrahim Traoré's message didn't end with naming his enemies. He went further, framing the June 5th assassination attempt as proof that his presence threatens a deeply rooted system that depends on Africa staying divided and dependent. After surviving what he called the 19th plan, Traoré is now speaking more freely and forcefully than ever before, and his boldness is gaining momentum. Across the continent, a number of African leaders, some of them newly elected, others previously quiet, have begun to shift their tone. These are the leaders Traoré calls the awakening voices. Presidents from Mali, Niger, and Guinea-Bissau have already pledged their loyalty to Traoré's cause of African self-determination. Botswana's President Dumelo Gideon Bo, who came into office through a democratic vote, surprised many when he openly endorsed Traoré's leadership, even though Traoré himself rose to power through a military coup. "It doesn't matter how power comes," Bo reportedly said. "What matters is whether power is used for the people." This unlikely alliance between elected and unelected leaders is a sign that something is shifting in African politics. For decades, coups were seen as illegitimate, but Traoré has reframed the conversation. He argues that a corrupt democracy is no better than a corrupt dictatorship, and that the West has long used elections as a cover to keep its allies in power. This view, once fringe, is gaining traction, especially among young Africans. So, online, hashtags like #Africa4Africans, #StandWithTraoré, and #EndNeocolonialism have been trending all over social media platforms in West and Central Africa. Grassroots support is rising, not just in Burkina Faso, but also in neighboring countries where people see Traoré as, a symbol of resistance. In his latest speeches, Traoré points out that Africa holds over 30% of the world's natural resources. He says, "We have gold, oil, uranium, lithium, and yet we remain poor. Why?" Then he answers his own question: because others benefit from our wealth while we fight each other. He accuses Western governments of backing African leaders who suppress change and punish those who challenge the status quo. According to him, that's why his assassination has been attempted 19 times. They fear unity, he said, because a united Africa cannot be exploited. And while some dismissed Traoré's claims as paranoid or maybe even exaggerated, recent developments have made people take him a lot more seriously. In Equatorial Guinea, reports surfaced that several officials were barred from entering European countries shortly after Traoré's speech. The bans appear tied to ongoing investigations into covert dealings and alleged attempts to destabilize Burkina Faso. Meanwhile, the African Union has remained largely silent, prompting criticism from citizens across the continent. Traoré has accused the AU of being too slow to respond, too hesitant to support real reform, and honestly, too willing to appease Western interests. Still, support continues to grow. Leaders in Mali and Niger, both of whom took power under controversial circumstances, have formed what some are calling the Sahel Bloc, a loose coalition of nations sympathetic to Traoré's message of resistance and independence. This group now meets regularly to discuss shared security, trade, and infrastructure goals, without the involvement of France, the European Union, or the United States. Traoré has also been engaging with grassroots organizations, student unions, and Pan-African youth movements. He's encouraged young Africans to organize peacefully but demand transparency from their governments. In one public statement he said, "The real war is not with guns, but with ideas. They cannot kill us all." His movement has attracted both praise and fear. In Kenya, President William Ruto's stance remains unclear. Although Ruto was seen visiting Burkina Faso earlier this year, his administration has also continued close cooperation with Western allies. Traoré's supporters are watching closely, waiting for Ruto to make his true position known. The president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, was recently seen attending a summit in Paris. Traoré's camp criticized this as a sign of misplaced loyalty. Ramaphosa's office has not publicly commented on the accusations. In Nigeria, widespread dissatisfaction with President Tinubu has fueled further support for Traoré's message. Many young Nigerians say they relate more to the vision coming from Burkina Faso than from their own capital. "At least Traoré is trying to break the cycle," one activist wrote online. "Tinubu is just continuing it." And then there's the bigger picture. Traoré believes Africa's survival, and, honestly, its rise, depends on rejecting dependence. In his words, The West does not want to kill me because I'm dangerous. They want to kill me because I'm contagious. If one African country succeeds in breaking free, others will follow. And that is their biggest fear. It's a message that really resonates, especially among youth. Across universities, rural villages, and urban centers, people are asking a difficult but necessary question. What does real independence look like in 2025? For Traore, the answer is simple. Real independence means owning African resources, educating African minds for African goals, and building African solutions without asking for permission. It means protecting leaders who serve the people, not those who serve foreign banks or multinational corporations. He's not naive about the risks. He knows the threats will continue, but he insists that fear will not silence him. In one of his final remarks during a town hall meeting, he said, "If I must die, let me die for something worth it. Let me die for Africa." As we close this report, one thing is clear: Ibrahim Traoré is no longer just the president of Burkina Faso. To many, he is the face of a new African struggle, a fight not for borders, but for dignity, autonomy, and unity. Whether he will survive politically, or even physically, is uncertain. But the message he carries is spreading fast.
Now moving on, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, has called for the fencing of Nigeria's borders as a strategic move to combat terrorism and cross-border crime. Speaking at a security conference in Abuja, General Musa stressed that effective border management is crucial in the fight against insecurity. He cited examples of countries like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia.
In Abuja this week, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, called for a radical new security strategy: the complete fencing of Nigeria's land borders with 4 of its neighboring countries, Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and Benin. His argument was blunt. In the face of growing insecurity and increased cross-border movement by armed groups, Musa said, Nigeria must take firm steps to secure its territory, even if that means building physical walls. Speaking at a high-level security summit on Tuesday, Musa defended his idea with global examples. Pakistan fenced 1,350 kilometers of its border with Afghanistan. That was the only time they had peace, he said. Saudi Arabia and Iraq have 1,400 kilometers fenced. Why can't we start thinking the same way? Nigeria shares more than 4,000 kilometers of land borders with its neighbors. 1,500 kilometers with Niger, 1,900 with Cameroon, and long stretches with Chad and Benin. Musa's proposal marks the first time a senior Nigerian official has so openly called for physical barriers between the country and its neighbors. The remarks have ignited a wave of public debate, not just in Nigeria but across the continent. Critics argue the proposal represents a failure of imagination and leadership. Instead of looking for ways to unite Africans, we have top officials thinking about dividing us further, said one Pan-African activist in a live stream reaction. This is the same colonial mindset that built walls to separate people rather than bring them together. Others questioned the relevance of using Saudi Arabia or Pakistan as examples. Are those countries' challenges the same as Nigeria's? The activist asked. Do we really believe that copying Middle Eastern border policies will solve West Africa's problems? The announcement comes at a time of heightened instability across the Sahel region. Extremist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State have taken root in vast stretches of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Security experts warn that the violence could spread further south if not contained. General Musa seems to believe a fence could slow or block such movement. But that line of thinking has drawn sharp rebukes. Critics argue that in an age of drone warfare and remote-controlled weaponry, physical fences are an outdated solution. No one's climbing over barbed wire anymore, said another analyst. Drones fly overhead. Cyber attacks breach digital borders. How is a fence supposed to stop that? Some even question the motives behind the defense chief's remarks. Why is he talking as if the fall of the Sahel is inevitable? One speaker asked. Who told him the Sahel will fall? Why that language? Why now? The comments have led to deeper questions about the role of African leadership in managing continental security. There's growing frustration among younger Africans who feel the current generation of leaders is more concerned with isolating their countries than building regional cooperation. We're in the era of the African Continental Free Trade Area, one Nigerian youth leader pointed out. We're supposed to be tearing down trade barriers, not building new physical ones. How can you say you support free movement of goods and people, and at the same time propose border fences? Others raised economic concerns. With unemployment surging and youth migration rising, many questioned why the government would prioritize walls over jobs. Imagine taking all that money and building industries instead, said one critic. Instead of fencing off the country, why not create jobs so young people won't be recruited by armed groups in the first place? It's a sentiment echoed by many across Nigeria. According to recent labor data, more than half of Nigeria's population is under 30, and youth unemployment hovers at dangerous levels. That reality has pushed thousands of young Nigerians to migrate across the Sahara, risking their lives in search of opportunity. For those critics, the idea of spending billions on fencing seems almost cruelly ironic. They want to build fences to stop threats, one speaker said. But the threats are our own young people who've been abandoned by this system. If you give them hope, they won't join militias. If you give them jobs, they won't pick up arms. That's the real solution. The debate has also opened broader philosophical questions about the future of Africa, and what kind of leadership the continent really needs. Why are our leaders so focused on militarization instead of integration? Asked one Ghanaian academic. Do they believe fences bring peace? Have we not learned from history that real security comes from economic stability and social cohesion, not razor wire? And as the discussion spreads online, a lot of young Africans are voicing similar concerns, questioning the competence and vision of those leading their nations. You can be old and still not be wise, one viral post read. We need leaders with vision, not just power. We need builders of unity, not designers of fences. The controversy shows no sign of fading. If anything, it's become a litmus test for the direction Africa is headed in 2025. On one side are those who believe isolation will protect. On the other are those who believe only unity will lead to peace. As the debate around Nigeria's proposed border fence continues, many Africans are asking a deeper question: what are we really trying to protect? For critics of the plan, the issue isn't just about wire and concrete. It's about the kind of continent we want to build. General Christopher Musa's call for fencing Nigeria's borders has struck a nerve not only because of its cost or feasibility, but because of what it represents: a shift away from unity and toward isolation. You build fences when you've given up on your neighbors, one speaker said during an online panel hosted by African youth leaders. You build walls when you've decided fear is stronger than trust. The call to fence the borders might appear as a short-term fix to escalating insecurity, especially with extremist groups operating in the Sahel. But many argue that the long-term consequences could be damaging. They say the plan reinforces a mindset that views fellow Africans as threats, not allies. That mindset, they argue, is dangerous. This is a man who says the Sahel will fall, one commentator said. But how does he know that? Why does he speak with such certainty, as if collapse is, inevitable? Are our leaders predicting disasters or preparing for unity? It's a serious point. Language shapes policy. And when national security conversations are rooted in fear, they often lead to decisions that isolate people, build suspicion, and shut down cooperation. Several critics have also questioned the practicality of the fencing plan. Beyond the political and ideological objections, there's a logistical problem. Fences can be bombed. With modern technology, drones, and long-range attacks, physical borders offer very little protection. As one security analyst put it, in today's world, war doesn't come through footpaths. It comes from the sky, the internet, and corruption within. The economic argument against fencing is also growing louder. Nigeria, like many African nations, is facing serious youth unemployment. Tens of millions of young Nigerians are either jobless or underemployed. The idea of spending billions on fencing projects while industries remain underdeveloped has sparked anger among the population. One Nigerian activist put it this way: we don't need fences, we need factories, we need jobs, we need schools and power. Our children need reasons to stay home, not reasons to run. Others fear that fencing Nigeria's borders could, create a domino effect. If Nigeria does it, what's to stop Cameroon, Chad, or Niger from doing the same? And if every African country starts building walls, what happens to the dream of a unified Africa? Some are already pointing to signs of this happening. In April, the Congolese government hinted at stronger border security policies. Rwanda has also spoken about tightening cross-border controls. If these trends continue, Africa could soon become a continent of walls, each country fenced off, neighbors viewing each other with suspicion, and the idea of continental free trade becoming more symbolic than real. Many believe that what Africa truly needs is not more border controls, but a shared vision, one that unites rather than divides. We need to invest in our young people, said a development expert in Lagos. They are the real security solution. Give them purpose. Give them a future. If they are working, they will protect their countries with pride, not fight them. The vision, some argue, should be economic hubs across the continent. Nigeria, with its oil and gas, could build industries that feed into a broader African market. Ghana could specialize in gold refining and digital finance. Kenya in tech and agriculture. South Africa in manufacturing. If each country plays to its strengths and collaborates, the economic uplift could make extremist recruitment far less effective. "You don't defeat terrorism by building a fence," said a young entrepreneur in Abuja. "You defeat it by making sure nobody wants to join them. That means jobs, education, fairness, and a sense that you belong to something bigger than just your village or your state." In this context, General Musa's proposal feels out of place. Many see it as a relic of old-school thinking, a knee-jerk response to complex problems that require deeper, longer-term solutions. You know, as one social media post put it, it's like trying to stop the rain with an umbrella made of leaves. The fence won't hold, and even if it did, it would hold back the wrong people, the traders, the students, the dreamers, the workers, not the attackers. As the backlash grows, so does the demand for leadership that sees the big picture. More and more Africans are calling for leaders who will prioritize unity over fear, progress over panic. Because at the end of the day, what most Africans want isn't war or walls. They want peace, they want prosperity, and above all, they want to feel safe, not because of barbed wire, but because their leaders chose to build bridges instead of fences. If you've made it this far, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe fencing Nigeria's borders is the right step, or should African nations be moving toward unity and collaboration? Drop your opinion in the comments below. If you support this kind of honest reporting, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on more powerful stories that matter to Africa.